All right, today we are going to look at operational definition of terms. So operational definition of terms come about because there are concepts in the aiming objectives of the study that needs to be defined. At the end of the lecture today, you should be able to do two things. One, differentiate between conceptual and operational definition of terms. And number two, identify constructs or variables that need to be defined operationally. So let me go into this. Chapter 1 of a thesis, the very first chapter, you have research problem, aiming objectives, and right after that we have operational definition of terms, followed by significance of the study. These are the 4 basic components of the chapter, and it's important to define the terms. Now, to help you understand the difference between operational and conceptual definition, let's start with this example of a cat here. It's a beautiful cat. And what do you mean? You can define a beautiful cat as a cat that is pleasing to the senses or mind aesthetically. And this would be a conceptual definition because it is very abstract and it just gives the meaning of beautiful cat, pleasing to the senses. And you know that if you use such a definition, people will define beauty of cats in different ways because it can be interpreted in many different ways. So let's kind of operationalize it. So when you operationalize a definition of this cat here, this beautiful cat has long fur, blue eyes, is clean, and has long whiskers. So let's just work on 4 definitions of a beautiful cat. So our operational definition of terms here uses 4 criteria to measure. And after that, we are going to use this definition to judge the beauty of another cat. So you remember these 4 now, because this is what we are going to use as operational definition of terms. Long fur, blue eyes, clean, and long whiskers. So you look at this cat. Is it beautiful? Can you tell me? Yes, Bill, can you remember the 4 criteria of a beautiful cat I talked about just now? Does this cat fulfill that criteria? If you just use conceptual definition of terms, meaning the meaning of the word beautiful cat, pleasing to the eye, yes, the cat is pleasing to the senses and mind aesthetically. But if you use operational definition of terms that we have just now, let's come back to it. Does the cat have long fur, blue eyes, is clean, and have long whiskers? Does it fulfill all the criteria that we worked on just now? No, Salahuddin, you are correct. Which one does it not fulfill? Blue eyes, Shalini, that's right. When you use an operational definition of terms, it is already operationalized for your study. You have decided you are going to use that definition and you have to stick to it. So even though this cat in front of me is so cute, I want to have it, it is not classified as beautiful cat because the operational definition we use just now says it must have blue eyes. So this is not a beautiful cat according to our operational definition of terms. So there is a difference between conceptual and operational. Conceptual is the meaning, just like this example here for patriotism. We understand it simply as love for our country. You want it more academically, it is a kind of loyalty to a particular nation that only the citizens of that nation can have. And you can cite sources for it, but it remains very conceptual understanding, just the meaning of the word patriotism, loyalty to the country, shown by the citizens. It goes for the meaning of the construct, patriotism. Now, when I want to study patriotism, and I did for my paper, which was published in 2017, we look at patriotism in terms of what Malaysians do. In this study, patriotism is operationally defined as what Malaysian citizens do to show their loyalty to Malaysia. Now, what you do in a questionnaire, you give answers. What do you do? Do you think it is important that you put Malaysian flag outside your house to show that you are patriotic? Then they answer yes or no. Is it very important that you buy Malaysian products to show that you are loyal to Malaysia, you are patriotic to Malaysia or not? It goes down to the actions. And this is what I have chosen to do to define patriotism operationally in my study. And I will stick to this, what Malaysians do to show their loyalty. If you decide to do the same study, you might choose to use the same operational definition from McIntyre 1984, but you might choose to define it operationally in a different way. And so long as it falls under this conceptual definition of loyalty shown by citizens, it is okay, but you need to make it very clear at the beginning of your thesis or FYP. In chapter 1, these are the operational definition of terms that I will use in my study. So look at this here, which is an operational definition of the term language proficiency. A, MUET Band score. B, ability to speak a language. C, ability of an individual to use language with a level of accuracy that transfers meaning in production and comprehension. Can you tell me? C. Do you pick C because it's longer? Can you see the green color question there? An operational definition. I don't want the meaning or the conceptual definition. I want to be operationalized that you can measure and all of us will have the same understanding. A, Katrina, thank you. That's correct. MUET Band score, if you get 6, everybody understands what a 6 person can do. If you get Band 4, we all know what a Band 4 person can do. And if you get only 1, we all know how little English you can speak. So there is a definition that goes with it. And when you use MUET Band score as a measure of language proficiency, this is called an operational definition of term. You can, of course, measure ability to speak a language using other language tests. You can choose to use the SPM English. You can choose to use TOEFL band scores. You can choose to use IELTS band scores. And those are operational definition of the term having language proficiency. But you cannot just give B and C, which are just conceptual definition. So pay attention to the word operational. So to sum up on the differences between conceptual and operational definition of terms, just to fix it in your mind. Conceptual definition is the meaning of the concepts and constructs studied. And you don't give dictionary definition for this. It's better if you can cite academic sources to give the meaning of those concepts. Operational definition of terms explains how the concepts or constructs are measured in your study. It could be using questionnaires, it could be using interview questions, tests, or observation guide. And you can actually mention what sources of questionnaire you are using to measure a particular concept. So let's see which concept or constructs need to be defined operationally. All constructs or variables need to be operationally defined because you need to collect data for them. And we need to know what kind of data you are collecting. That's why we need the operational definition at first, because different researchers will use different operational definition, and you need to make it clear so that people know what you're talking about. So to do that, you look at the aim and objectives of the study. Each objective has at least one construct or variable, something you are studying. Example, in the example on the difficulty with passive structure, the objectives break difficulty down into 3. 1, ability to recognize a passive structure. 2, ability to rewrite the passive as active sentence. And 3, ability to explain the function of using the passive sentence. So this is broken down. Then if I do not explain recognition of passive structure, you wouldn't know what I really mean. So I need to explain this in my chapter 1. Ability to rewrite passive. I need to say what it means, although it is kind of self-explanatory. And number 3, explain function of using the passive sentence. I need to give a bit of context that I just want them to explain the passive sentences in that short paragraph. You know, this is going into the practical details of how we measure the ability. And this is what operational definition is about. So you are advised to take operational definition of terms from researchers in the field. They do not put into separate headings like in a thesis, but you have to go and find it. So I show you my paper where I do give you operational definition of terms, but it doesn't have that heading. And you will know that in a thesis, it comes right after aim and objectives. So in a paper, that's also where it will come. Okay, so you look here. Very first 2 lines are the aims of the study, which is to examine the relationship between language use and ethnicity of Chinese, Fuzhou, and Hokkien in Sarawak, Malaysia. Specifics examining were 1, 2, 3. These are the 3 objectives. And right after that, you see this statement. In this paper, the term ethnic language is used to refer to the Fuzhou and Hokkien dialects spoken by these 2 Chinese subgroups. When necessary, the term ethnic language of the collective Chinese ethnic group is used to refer to Mandarin, the standard Chinese language, where I talk about the writing and the phonics. So this is the operational definition of terms. You find the word ethnic language defined. You find the word Mandarin actually also defined by using very long term. This is what I choose to do to make it clear, because there will be that confusion between the Chinese standard language Mandarin and the Chinese dialects. And you say, why don't I just call them Chinese standard language and Chinese dialects? Well, you know, in the field of social linguistics, if you publish and you use words like Chinese standard language and Chinese dialects, you actually come under criticism, because there is that argument that there is actually very little difference between what is a language and what is a dialect. A language is called a language because it's maybe formal, it's got more support for it, and a language is called a dialect just because there is less political support for it. So there is that criticism. That's why I avoid using dialects and standard language. I choose to use ethnic language, an ethnic language of the collective Chinese ethnic group. So in that way, I don't come under criticism. So these are done also for this purpose. Okay. So if it is in the FYP or thesis, there are more terms you need to define. If you look at this example here, can you tell me what other terms or constructs need to be defined? Hokkien and Fuzhou, yes, need to define. Thank you, Bill. They need to be defined because people do not automatically understand what they refer to. All right, here I've circled for you all the keywords that appear in the objectives of the study. Even language used in various domains need to be defined. I need to tell you what domains I'm talking about: family, friendship, religious domain, transactions domain, maybe education, Maybe legal domain, I need to tell you, otherwise you don't know what I'm talking about. How many domains and what are they? And for objective 2, I need to define paternity and patrimony dimensions of ethnicity language link. Otherwise, you don't know what I mean. So when you look at the objectives of the study, if you think people automatically do not know what you mean, those things need to be defined because there are certain concepts there. This ethnicity language link also needs to be defined because it's not just automatically you understand what I'm talking about. Actually, there are 3 kinds of links according to Fishman 1977. It's not just anyhow, so need to be defined. So you see that when you make aim and objectives of the study, it tells you certain variables are being focused on in your study, and therefore those variables need to be defined so that other people know how you're measuring them. So you do that when you give operational definition, but you can start with the meaning or the conceptual definition. Here I give you another question. Which one is the operational definition of reading readiness when a child is 1 year old, 2 year old, 3, 4, 5? You know, you say, is the child ready to read? Can we get an operational definition so that you say, child number 1, you are ready to read. Child number 2, you don't seem so ready to read. How do you judge? You know, will you use A or would you use B here? B. Good, Katrina. The time when a child can pick up a book and read some words inside. So this one, we all can judge. We put a box of books on the floor and see whether the child can pick it up and read. If yes, we say you are ready to read. If you use the very first one, it is a bit abstract, you know, the time when a child is ready to learn to read and the time during which a person transitions from being a non-reader into a reader. Now, what on earth is a non-reader and what on earth is a reader? It is just a conceptual definition that we get from articles, but B is how we operationalize it. When we do the study, go to a kindergarten, this is what we are going to use, B, to decide how many of them are ready to read. So operational definition of terms are very clear on the type of data to be collected, very clear on how the concept is measured. So on the next slide, you will see conceptual and operational definition of 5 stages of reading readiness. This one, of course, is the conceptual definition. It hasn't gone to definition yet, but it gives you the constructs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stages of reading readiness. And this is the conceptual definition for print awareness, for letter knowledge, for phonological awareness, for listening comprehension, and for motivation to read. Now I'm going to give you the operational definition and get you to match them. But this one here, can the child tell you which is the front of the book? Does the child hold the book upside down? This is really the operational definition, but for what? It's actually for print awareness. Because for a very young child, they hold out the book upside down. They hold the book upside down like this because they don't know the words are supposed to be in which way, and the parents find that it's very cute. They start from the back of the book because they also don't know the cover looks like this. So they do not have the print awareness. The print awareness comes about when they realize, oh, the book is held up this way and the front is here, and this is the correct way that it's standing. So this is the first stage that the child needs to have before it can go into ABC, the letter knowledge. And when we go to the kindergarten, how do we judge whether they have print awareness? We put the books there and tell them, pick out a book and read, and then you see whether they hold up correctly or not. So the top part is the conceptual definition. The bottom part is the operational definition. So if you follow the bottom part, all of you can help me to do this study in different kindergartens. Now I would like you to match the conceptual and operational definitions of 4 stages of reading readiness. We've already done the print awareness. Now I want you to match the other 4. Motivation to read is A. Motivation to read is a child's eagerness and willingness to read. Okay, A, how many times did your child pick up a book to read yesterday? Good. Letter knowledge is C, according to Kim. Letter knowledge enables a child to recognize the letters of the alphabet and to know the names and sounds of each. C, how many times does your child say the letters B, C correctly when you point to the letters? Good, Kim. Bill says listening comprehension is B. Listening comprehension meaning is ability to understand the meaning of words heard and relate to them in some way. B, how well can your child answer questions about a story read out? Definitely correct. B, somebody on making a lot of noise. So we are left with phonological awareness, which is the ability to hear and identify the various sounds in spoken word. How many words are there in a sentence? Open the door. For you, of course, you know open the door. You know it's 3 words, but a child hears open the door. They may think it's only 1 word. They don't know it's actually 3 words. This also takes skills because they don't know. They just hear the sound, open the door. They may even think it is open the door. Yeah, 4 words because they don't know that open is 1 word. So this is the second stage after they've got the letter knowledge. And only then after that they can proceed to listening comprehension and motivation to read. So we have learned here the differences between conceptual definition and operational definition. Conceptual, the meaning. Operational, you can actually know what to do to measure the ability at different stages. So if you were to write aim and objectives of the study, it would look something like this. The aim of the study is to investigate the reading readiness of children entering primary 1 in rural and urban areas in Malaysia. Objectives of the study are to, number 1, determine whether the children have print awareness. Number 2, assess the level of letter knowledge of the children. You check from A to Z how many they know when you point. And 3, assess the phonological awareness of the children. Well, you can try, open the door, come here and ask them how many words there are. But you decide how many words you want to test. And every child you test in the same way. You don't give these children more, give that one less. 4, evaluate the listening comprehension skills of the children. Okay, this one you have to use spoken questions. You cannot ask them to answer questions like in the class because they cannot write yet. And finally, 5, find out how motivated they are to read. Just now we said how many books they pick up. So you hang around them and you see how many books they pick up to read. All right, so this is how you write objectives of the study. For each of the 5, you know exactly what to do to collect the data. And the data are different for all the 5. The children need to show different kinds of behavior for you to measure them on the 5 levels of reading readiness. So this one is a very good example of how aim is broken down into objectives. So finally, reminder, to write good operational definition of terms, you need to, number 1, identify the constructs or variables in your aim and objectives to define. Then, number 2, look for conceptual and operational definition of terms from journal papers or books. And finally, number 3, take the definitions that suit your study. Yes, there is certain biasness, but you are taking from journal papers. There are many out there. You take those that suit your study, and then you make sure your instrument follow those definitions. Normally, if you have decided to use certain instrument, then your operational definition will follow the instrument, the people who come up with that instrument, but they go hand in hand, whichever you decide to do first. All right.